At the Grap Factory, we got that self-defense money. Yeah. Thank you for your support in these tough times.
Ask a question about what was my hardest sort of lesson or pill to swallow during my time with JITS. It would definitely be when Steve identified that I was wrestling with anger. In my mind, I thought that I was calm and I was in control, but in reality, I was stiff and I was moving with such forward force and crushing my opponents. It was such a natural instinct in me that I couldn't even associate it myself, but I had, which is great, someone who was actually watching my wrestling close enough to see that I was exerting wasted energy and I was trying to exert my force and dominance on someone else. Now, when you train in this environment, it's not about that. We're all trying to be a team and we're trying to develop together. The last thing you want to be doing is just absolutely crushing your opponent and for them to not learn anything about it and for them not to want to roll with you anymore. You want your rolls to be actually a good experience for people. They want to feel like, oh wow, you got the better of me, but you got the better of me through technique and through something you've learned. You didn't just crush me for 5 minutes, make me question everything I've done in my life and why I'm here at this present moment. I realized in myself that I was like, okay, well, I've got to scale that back. At the time, I didn't have the tools to do that, and I'm continuing to work through that at the moment. But it's something that even now that I take outside my life as well, where I can't be dominant in all situations, sometimes it's better to sit back and let it come through. So interesting question that was just put to me. What have I seen with Jiu-Jitsu that helps people's egos and identities? Now, you can identify yourself as, I'm strong and I can lift lots of weights and I'm bigger than Steve and I should be able to beat him. This sport is a great balancer in that way that Steve has worked excessively hard on his technique and his ability, and there is a level of fitness involved as well. But Steve breaks down a guy like me who is close to 10 to 15 kilos heavier than him, and I've been training my whole life. But the amazing thing about this sport is you can be so efficient in some way of moving, but this sport breaks down those movements and you learn how to move on a 3D plane and it's quite amazing. As far as the ego goes, with that you can be a large individual being beaten by a smaller person or a female beating a male, and you learn to be humbled. Because there is always someone out there that is going to humble you. And I think that for progress as people, we need something to humble us. Otherwise, there's no sort of depth of how low you could go and start to lose your sense of character. So I was asked a question about what would be my most embarrassing moment or hardest moment in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Now, that would have started when I first started training in JITS. I was very new, but I was still very physically fit and had full belief in my strength and my fitness. I had great success starting off. I was going through all the classes, going through all the white belts, and I started to develop a little bit of an ego. I at the time was learning from a certain instructor who he sort of tried to teach me to work without strength, but then we finally had a roll together and he gave up midway through the roll and he just said, well, it's just because you're heavy. And I remember thinking, well, what's the point of this? I can't change how my body is and I can't adjust that sort of thing, and I thought I'd hit the pinnacle of everything I was going to learn. I then went into my first comp after this, and I had great success in my weight division, but then went into the opens. And I finally wrestled someone who was far bigger than me and far stronger than me. And I sat under this guy for what felt like an eternity. And I remember for once feeling my body fully give out and my arms give way, and I just had nothing left. And I lay down, and for what felt like in the first time in my life, I actually had submitted without even tapping or anything. This guy had beaten me. I then found out that he'd only been training for 6 to 7 months, but was just naturally gifted. I then had that registration that this world is quite large, there's a lot of talented individuals. If people are going to use the excuse that, oh, you're bigger than me, you're stronger than me, that's setting the wall for yourself, and that's, if you put these things up, you're never going to develop and you're never going to get better. It took me a long time to get over that, because I thought, well, if this is what all the instructors are like, how am I going to get better? I took a long hiatus before I started training again, but then found with my sort of next gym that I had sort of regressed, but by regressing and going back to stage one, I was able to sort of learn that, well, okay, this is time where my body's actually got to move. I will say that age probably helped with that as well, because I didn't have that ego backing me up and those sort of impenetrable walls at that time. But it made all the difference in that initial moment to lose, because as everyone says, you learn so much more from a loss than what you do from constant victory. But I remember coming back from that and just thinking that, well, as soon as I start thinking I'm the strongest person in the bloody world, there's going to be someone who's considerably stronger than me.